So welcome back to my channel. I am going to read you guys the book that I wrote. It is not published yet. Maybe by doing this, it will be one day. I don't know. But this book is more important than, how many I can sell or anything like that. The information itself is very important, especially for believers who kind of are unsure of where they are, where they stand with God, or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to skip the author's bio because that's not important for today. And the dedication is more to my husband and my children. But I'm going to start with the preface, which I titled A Fine Start. Here we go. Fine. 4 letters, 1 syllable, and a word we have stretched across emotions, excuses, and the versions of ourselves we present to the world. It fills the gaps where honesty should live. It comforts where conviction should speak. It allows us to exist without ever truly examining what is real. But nothing about Jesus is merely fine. He is sovereign. He is all-knowing. He is holy. He is trustworthy. And the life he calls us into cannot be lived at a distance. It begins and is sustained in his presence. You don't know me. And that's a good thing. It keeps the focus where it belongs. These pages were never meant to echo my voice. If this book is ever heard, like it is now, I pray my voice is the least memorable part of it, and that the Spirit of the living God does what only he can do. What matters is the message. The message is not built on my authority, but on his. I am simply a witness, someone who encountered Jesus and found his truth too transformative, too necessary, and too real to keep to myself. At its core, this book is an invitation out of deception and into relationship, not religion, not performance, relationship with Jesus. Fine confronts the subtle lies that have followed humanity since the beginning. Deception rarely announces itself. It whispers, it blurs lines, it dulls discernment, and it convinces believers that obedience is optional, that holiness is excessive, and that closeness with Jesus is something reserved for a different kind of Christian. But Jesus interrupts. In his mercy, he exposes what we have learned to live with. He dismantles what we thought was normal. He brings truth into places we have avoided, not to shame us, but to restore us. This is the work of Jesus, not dramatic for the sake of spectacle, but precise, intentional, and rooted in truth. This book exists because he still rescues. He still calls people out of confusion, compromise, and counterfeit faith. He still draws hearts back to himself. And if these pages accomplish anything, I pray it is this, that you see Jesus more clearly, trust him more deeply, and obey him more fully. Not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of relationship. May this be a fine start. Not fine as an acceptable or surface level, but fine in the way that something is refined, purified, made true, and set apart. A beginning where what once felt normal is questioned, where truth is welcomed, and where a real walk with Jesus is birthed. Welcome. Let us begin. All right, we're going to jump into chapter 1, which is titled Fine Testimony. I didn't grow up in church. For most of my life, well into adulthood, Jesus felt more like a familiar name than a living savior. I knew of him, heard about him, and saw people reference him, but I did not know him. He wasn't real to me. Church was something we did occasionally. It was more about moments than relationship, holidays, special occasions, or when it felt like the right thing to do because someone had died. Even then, it wasn't centered on God. It was centered on us, on tradition, and on what felt good in the moment. There were small glimpses, occasional visits with relatives who attended church more consistently, moments where I was introduced to things I did not understand at the time. I remember being young, told to pray with the goal of praying in tongues and to seek something spiritual. When I tried, I felt more confusion than connection. I did not have language or understanding to recognize what was happening, so I dismissed it. In our home, prayer existed, but it was routine. It was something we said before meals or during certain moments, but it wasn't something we lived. God felt distant, not absent in theory, but absent in experience. As I got older, life began to shape my beliefs more than truth ever did. In high school, during a difficult season in my family, I was briefly introduced to the Bible in a more intentional way. But instead of drawing me in, it overwhelmed me. I didn't understand it. And because I didn't understand it, I quietly decided it wasn't for me. I would go on for years without opening one again. Around the same time, I made decisions that would mark me deeply and had my first abortion. I was navigating life without wisdom, without guidance, and without truth. I believed I was doing the best I could with what I had, but in reality, I was being shaped by pain, confusion, and a deep desire to be loved. That became a pattern. I learned early to attach my value to things that could be seen: appearance, attention, approval. I did not know who I was, so I allowed the world to define me. And the world is always willing to give you an identity, even if it costs you everything. I chased love, but what I found was often conditional. I gave more than I should have, accepted less than I deserved, and convinced myself it was normal. I thought love was something you had to earn, something you had to prove yourself worthy of. There were moments where I tried to do better, moments where I reached for something different. I would go to church, especially during harder seasons in my life, and I genuinely believed that meant I was on the right path. But still, I did not know God. And more than that, I didn't know there was another way to live. I was not resisting surrender. I was unaware of it. I thought going to church, trying to be a good person, and avoiding certain things when I felt it was inhumane was enough. I believed that was what it meant to be a Christian. So my life continued to produce confusion, instability, and brokenness. I didn't connect it to my distance from God. I just thought life was hard. I didn't know there was a difference between knowing about God and being submitted to Him. I didn't know fruit was evidence or to even look for good fruit in my life. I didn't know peace, consistency, and transformation were available. So I just kept living. From the outside, it could have looked like I was growing, but internally, I was still broken, still searching, still unaware of how far I actually was from not only God, but truth. I was drifting, not lost enough to cry out, but not found enough to be free. And that is a dangerous place to be. When I became pregnant with my son, something in me shifted, not fully, not completely, but enough to make me aware that I needed something more. I began going to church more intentionally. I started listening to gospel music only on the radio. I became more open to the idea that God could be real in my life. Even had the pleasure of teaching in children's ministry at the church I attended. But even then, I was still building my life on my own understanding. I wanted God involved, but I didn't know that I was supposed to let Him lead. I stayed in situations I knew weren't healthy. I tolerated things I should not have accepted, and I made decisions rooted in fear, insecurity, and survival instead of truth. I was trying to create stability, but everything I built kept collapsing. Relationships failed, finances were inconsistent, my sense of identity shifted with every circumstance and new song. I was exhausted. I had moments of hope, moments where I thought things were turning around, but nothing ever lasted. I couldn't understand why. I was trying. I was showing up. I was doing what I thought was right, but I was living without truth. Years passed like that. Cycles repeated, pain deepened, and I became more and more tired until I reached a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was not okay, and everything I had trusted to make me okay had failed me repeatedly. Life felt like I was drifting at sea, drowning in a life I thought I had control over. I was tired, empty, and without real hope. One day, I was home alone doing something as simple as laundry. Everything in me reached a breaking point. There was no dramatic setting, no audience, no plan, just me, my thoughts, and a level of exhaustion I could not carry anymore. I had convinced myself that if nothing changed, I did not want to keep living. Suicide, a whisper in my thoughts. I didn't have a clear plan, but the thought was there as an option, a way out if life continued the way it had been. So I did something I never truly done before. I confronted God, not with reverence, not with understanding as my goal, but with frustration, anger, and questions I had been carrying for years. I spoke to him as if he had been the one, holding my life in this miserable state as if he had chosen the pain, the instability, and the disappointment. I told him that if he was real, if he truly had control, then something needed to change. I did not expect a response. Up until that moment, God had always felt distant, silent, mythical. But that day, he answered, not loudly, not in a way that drew attention, but clearly enough that I knew it wasn't my own thoughts. He told me that if I would give him a yes, he would begin to work on me. That response caught me off guard, not because I hurt him, but because I didn't like what he said. I wanted him to fix my life. I wanted him to fix the people around me. I wanted him to change my circumstances. I did not see myself as the problem. So I pushed back. I told him, in my own way, that I was doing everything right, that I was a good person, a good mother, a good wife. I was doing my best. And that if anything needed to be fixed, it was everything and everyone around me, not me. I'm fine. His response was simple. Are you? That question exposed something I had never examined. For the first time, I was not measuring myself against other people. I was being measured against truth. And I didn't have an answer. What started as confrontation turned into a conversation, and that conversation revealed something I had never understood before. I was not as fine as I thought I was. I was not as right as I believed I was, and I was not as close to God as I had convinced myself I was. But instead of condemning me, he invited me. Again, he offered the same thing, change as a response to my yes. Not a perfect life, not immediate answers, not granting me control over everything around me. A surrender I didn't even have language for until that moment. I did not say yes because I fully understood. I said yes because I had nothing left. And the moment I did, something shifted, not around me, but in me. A peace I had never experienced settled over me. Not temporary relief, not distraction, but peace. And with that peace came something else. Hunger, a desire to know God, not just about him, a desire to read his word, not out of obligation, but because I needed truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to manage my circumstances. I was being transformed. I hope you guys enjoyed these first two sections, chapters. I don't know, the preface in the first chapter. Um, the book is complete, but the process and the progress that God has me in to release it into the hands of those who need it is still underway. But in the meantime and in between time, I will enjoy this stage of just sitting and reading this book to you. We're going to jump into Fine together. And then, I don't know, maybe after we finished all the chapters, it'll be something that we can discuss. I love y'all, but Jesus loves you way more. See y'all later. Bye.